First of all, we want to acknowledge Paul. We thank you so much for being here today, and Miss Evelyn Simpson. And at Miss Cockrell Services, we had some resolutions that we were supposed to present to the family that did not get presented. So Paul, if you could come forward and receive these. And it's so good to see you.
Yeah, so
So,
I thought John was gonna make it, but he's probably tied up at work.
Okay.
So I will tell him
okay.
whatever this is.
These are the resolutions that were read at the services, and we, always at the end of the resolutions, they always say a copy will be presented to the family. So those are your copies.
Oh, okay, thank you very much.
So those are all of those, so
Okay,
that's that. And
Yes,
then we're
thank you.
gonna continue on.
okay. Thank
So,
you,
you're
Campbell.
welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And now, Mr. Abernathy.
Morning, church. Let's get some excitement going on up in here. We have been a little down. Pastor brought a good message. And now we're going to talk about why we are going to continue the tribute for Mrs. Cockrell. One of the things that, if you know Mildred and looking around the room, most people did. Mildred was not one that would have us on this day in any way to be sad.
No.
When we give a tribute to Mildred, it's excitement. And we're excited about Mildred on this day. I spent a little time thinking about my relationship with her, and I'll let you do the same, but I want you to take just a second or two to look at the two images that are on the wall. One is, look at her. Look at her, she's fine. Look at her, fine. And look over here, a little bit more mature, but even finer. The thing that I want to bring to the group that's here today and the congregation is that Mildred thought it not robbery to give of her time, her talent, and her treasure to the youth and all that she ever touched. Mildred was that kind of person. She wasn't one to be selfish. She would often speak up if something wasn't quite right. But at the same time, she continued to give. And Mildred Cockrell lives today. I want you to think about the fact that when time passes and we go to the other side, we want to be remembered for what we're doing, not just of what we did. Mildred is doing something right now as far as the scholarship program. This is the scholarship committee, but you are also part of that scholarship committee. In Sunday school this morning, a certain portion of it dealt with Barack Obama. And Barack, he penned a book while he was in the United States Senate. I'm going to say it again, the United States Senate. A young guy from Illinois. I don't know whether you know where Illinois is, but Blanche and I spent a little time there growing up. And the name of the book was The Audacity of Hope. The Audacity of Hope. Thought on reclaiming the American dream. I want you to think now about Mildred. 1964. Mildred was in Germany. A black woman studying abroad. Studying abroad. Huh. She had a friend that she ran across. A lady on the other side, the room just across from her, happened to be a white lady. 1964. Now, see, in 2023, we don't deal with that much. But for those of us that have got a little tenure to us, we think of what was going on in 1964. This lady happened to come across the hall, and they became acquainted. This lady's name is Marilyn Bailey. She now lives in Atlanta, Georgia. Blanche and I talked to her just yesterday, but Blanche has had some conversation with her on for several years. The reason I'm bringing this up, Mildred was a pioneer. All right. A pioneer in 1964. And the reason that we're here today to continue to talk about her is what she's done and what a friend of hers called yesterday. Do you realize how many years that's been? It's been a few days that Mildred and Marilyn were in Europe. They even found some time, her and Mildred and Howard even went to Atlanta and spent some time having dinner with them. The point I'm trying to make here is that Mildred wants us to continue perpetuating the need for education. Mildred was an educator. Again, I'm so blessed. I had Mildred ask me to come to speak to one of her classes. When it happened, I thought, I'm just talking to kids, doing what I do. But now, in retrospect, Mildred was continuing to be the person that she was and letting, and in her particular class, if I can remember correctly, I don't remember seeing any brown kids and black kids in that class. Not that they weren't available, but Mildred was reaching out to everybody. Education for Mildred is extremely important. Your scholarship committee is here to continue to move that scholarship program even further. We have been blessed with dollars and cents from the Cockrell family. John and his brother and the family have just most recently, even though they've given some other money, they've asked that a specific amount at this particular time is $1,500, specifically dedicated and given to the scholarship committee to be used for young people who are graduating from college. I share this with you for you to go into your own hearts and think about what we need to do for our young people. I think if you look around the audience right now. Look around the audience. How many young folks do we see under the age of 18 that's in this congregation? When I say that, I ask you to think about what we need to be doing to have them in this congregation. And one of the things that we have to do is to recognize them for the things they do well and not spend a whole lot of time on what they don't do well. And that's, Mildred was that kind of person. In her soft and subtle way, I can see the seat that she used to sit next to Mrs. Prim. And both of them just fine ladies, fine ladies. And they gave some others something to kind of look at. How do I want to be remembered? Mildred gave. She continues to give. So what we want to do today is, as we think of our scholarship committee and our scholarship program, we have a name that is tied to it right now, and it's called the Maud Rent Pate Scholarship Fund. We are going to take that name with the agreement of the church and combined it. There was others. Mrs. Prim also was one of those that contributed, and many members of the congregation. But we're going to get together and come up with a name that's common. And the last name that will be used is going to be Mildred's name. And it's not going to be the name that's going to be used. It's going to be something that we can recognize and embrace and continue to grow. We have 3 young college students that will be graduating from college this spring. On June 9th, we are going to acknowledge those individuals in this church, as well as high school students and elementary students, and we are going to ask the church to come out, and we're going to try to reach out to a broad portion of the church, the community. I had the honor just on last evening, a brother of mine who happens to be sitting in the choir, his last name is Blackman, but we were sitting there having dinner and just enjoying the brotherhood. Amen. And one of the things that we were talking about is how do we perpetuate and grow the young people? How do we reach out to them? I don't know what's going to happen, but one of the things that came up, and I thought of his kids, I can remember when Caleb and Marissa were this tall. Michelle used to stand behind Marissa, she was about this high, and have her to speak to us in announcements. Mm-hmm. We need to get that back. Yes. We need to get that back at Campbell. In just a couple of, Gary, I know you'll probably kill me for it later, but when does Caleb graduate? Next year? Next year. Think about it, church. How great would it be for us to begin to plan now for young people to be graduating and for us to acknowledge. So what I want you to think about as we bring this summary, and that is to figure out ways to increase our scholarship fund. Increase our scholarship fund and let our young people know that we care about them and we recognize their efforts because it's not easy growing up. I'll end with this and say, none of this happens without people like Mildred committing time, talents, and resources to the cause. Thanks for listening to your scholarship committee.
And with that, we are going to turn it over to Mr. Walker.
Amen.
I apologize, Minister Walker.
It's all good. It's about Mildred today, but in the spirit of Palm Sunday. Amen. So this is all about giving praise to our great God's Son. Amen. But we're using the spirit of Mildred today. That's what the context is. As we know that when Mildred transitioned, the organ was played for the last time at that time, and a bow was placed on it. Amen. And it's been 89 days. Right. It was to have been 86 to celebrate, meaning her years of life. Amen. So then what do we do? Meaning, why do we do it? It's to say, music was a part of Mildred's life. Right. She served, and we know that all of that selfless contributions. Amen? Amen. So the organ speaks today back to the God who all praise is due. Amen? Amen. So it's not about Mildred. When the organ speaks, it's going back to God. One more time. It just was silent in honor of her life and how she lived in a way that needs no explanation. Amen? So you say, what are we playing today? Mildred loved some of the Palm Sunday pieces, so God gave me a medley. You'll hear a little of the palms, and then we go into Ride On. Who? King Jesus. And then after that, we kind of get into total praise. So when we play today, it's not entertainment. When the song goes with you, you get up, Evangelist Peggy, and get the dust out and go. And anybody else that praises, amen? So, well, let's say, just give God some praise right now. So at this time, I think that we take the bow off.